I avoided that question myself for years, but I finally came to grips with it that Sunday morning at the 10 o'clock service. See, when I noticed the lights in my body feeling bad, I really noticed everything else was being affected too. And then I asked myself, why am I putting myself through this? Why do I want this for my life? Because I think that those two beers were accumulation of many months and years of drinking that finally started to be like, hey, there's a cost and you're starting to pay for it. And that was a real moment. And so now 6 months into my sober journey, I'm realizing my body feels a lot better, my brain feels better, and I can only say my relationships must be better. My relationship with God must be better. My finances are better. The way I am using my calling in my life are better. Everything in my world had to have improved because I am no longer feeling the way I did. Go back to Proverbs 23:31 through 32. It says, "The wine that goes down smooth bites like a serpent and stings like a viper." What's that saying is, for me in my story, it was like, wow, when I read this, I was shocked. I was blown away. I was taken back because that's exactly what was happening to me. It was going down easy. I'm watching TV, hanging with the wife, hanging with the friends, drinking the beer. But as soon as it goes down, it sneaks out of nowhere. And you will find yourself at that 10 o'clock Sunday morning service having to wear sunglasses, sitting when you don't want people to know that you just feel off. You're pretending. It's that whole nother level of I'm just not myself. And I could feel it in my body. But that short term pleasure is what I want. But it's really biting me in the back end. Even another proverb says 14:12, says there's a way that seems right, but it ends in death. And in my journal, and so I've been journaling a lot more. I've been looking into what is wisdom. And I started this episode with sitting in that 10 o'clock service, thinking about where am I at in life? And wisdom, as I'm coming to find out, is knowledge applied. So you look at the book of Proverbs, and it is a book that really talks about what it takes to go with the grain of life. God created the world in a certain way. And so how is that way played out? And so knowledge applied means you live this way intentionally, whether you agree with it or not. And for me, I really started also noticing, as much as started asking the question, is this short-term pleasure worth it? Wisdom asks the question, what is the long-term cost? That's one thing that I think our society is missing is we're missing the wisdom of God. We're missing the wisdom of creation. We're missing out on, is this short-term pleasure going to cost me down the road? Think about investing. A lot of people talk about their 401ks or investing in money. You put in a little money now, you get a big return later. But you don't put any money in now, what is that costing you? You ever do those reverse calculators where I decided to lower, I say $500 a month toward my investment, then I changed it to 400. And you'll see down the road that $100 a month, that was $1 million 40 years from now or whatever. Go do the math yourself. But you see where there's the cost, the short-term pleasure of I want that extra $100 to buy myself something good right now instead of investing it in my future cost me $1 million 40 years from now. Granted, we don't know when we're going to die, so money's something to talk about. But think about the way of life. Think about my story with alcohol and how those two beers, I came to that realization of I am paying the price for months over months and years over years of choices. It wasn't just two beers that pushed me over and made me think about my life. It was the fact that those were two beers on the back end of you're starting to feel the bite of the viper just coming out of nowhere, attacking me. And I had a real choice to make. So that's where back in January, mid-January or whatever, I decided to change my life around. And it's been a really good journey so far. I've been learning so much. I've been like so much more focused on my health and my calling. And the best thing is I feel like I have become so much more clear in what God has called me to do. And I'm no longer questioning, God, is this what you have for me? It's how do we get there? Because I now have the energy, the mental capacity, and the abilities to do it. I freed up my time because when I used to drink, I didn't wake up early in the morning. Now I wake up in the morning and shoot a podcast video. I wake up in the morning and I go and work out. There's so many things that I do. So let's go ahead and widen this like a little bit. So what in your life passes or fails the right now, cost later test? Like what are you doing that like feels good right now, but you know this is going to cost me later? Is that something you're doing with your money? Is that something you're doing with your health? Is that something you're doing with your relationships? Think about just those big three right now. Money, like I just talked about. Are you wasting your money? Are you putting your money into things where it's a lot of fun now, but it's going to cost you one day? What about your health? Like the way you eat, the way you drink, even if you're related to me with alcohol, or the way you exercise? Are you doing the short term pleasure now of sitting on the couch an extra 30 minutes when you should get up and go for a walk? When you should wake up and go to the gym? When you should probably stop going out for fast food, start eating more healthy food that grows out of the ground and walks on legs around the world? Is that something that we need to pay attention to? What about relationships? Are you having the short term pleasure of pornography, sexual interactions with people that aren't your spouse, just because the short term pleasure feels good? Look at these three areas of life, and you can go look at the book of Proverbs like I've been reading, and you'll notice there's a lot to be said about these three topics. Just these three. There's plenty more in there that I go deep dive and everything. But like I said, I'm reading through it right now and don't have time to get into all of it. But it changes the game. When you realize that God created the world to work a certain way, and He has given us His word in the Bible and a specific book in there that has laid out this grand map of how the world works to go with the grain, it's going to change your life. But another question I started asking myself is, why do I go against the grain of creation? Why do I go against what God says is right and true all the time? And I had to figure it out for myself. Hey, you know what? Drinking ain't bad. The Bible doesn't say drinking is bad. It says drunkenness is bad. And so but I will say there is a piece of, I think, as science has come to prove that alcohol is just bad for you, I think there's another layer of just health that's to be taken into account, at least for me, but I'll leave that for you to determine. But I was thinking to myself, in many areas of my life, I decided to figure it out on my own. And then I found out time and time again, the Bible and the Proverbs are right every single time. If you lie and you're a liar, it's going to cost you relationships. If you're a gossip, if thing for gossip is if you start the sentence with no one, like, don't tell anybody I said this, but don't finish the sentence, okay? That's just an easy one-off gossip, okay? If you're talking about people that aren't there and sharing unnecessary information, that's gossip. And guess what the Proverbs say about that? You're going to lose friends, you're going to lose friendships, you're going to lose relationships, you're going to damage relationships, and it's going to cost you. So that's just like one aspect of, wow, the Bible actually talks about this and it plays out accurately. I I find that I live so many different areas of my life where I try to figure it out on my own. The Bible says, okay, hey, you know what? You should live with integrity, be honest. But dang, that's a big upfront cost it's asking me to be honest right now when I know I'm probably gonna get in trouble. But look at the long-term cost. Think about the short-term pleasure, long-term cost. Short-term cost, long-term pleasure. You see how they're backwards. And so it goes back to a sermon I remember hearing about the upside down kingdom is everyone says we live in an upside down kingdom, but I'm like, what if we live like God's kingdom is upside down? What if our kingdom is upside down? And so we're living in the upside down where, hey, it's all about short term cost, long term freedom. It's all, not about short term freedom, long term cost. That's what the devil's play is. The devil's play is to make you not pay now, make you pay later when it's too overwhelming to pay. Imagine him just having this little finance account and he's putting $100 in a month of this, like, here's the short term pleasure, short term pleasure. Next thing you know, you're $1 million in debt to the devil. You know, that might be a little strong, but maybe some of you need to hear it for whatever action you're taking a part of now that God says, this has no place in my world to do. What is that for you and what are you doing? Think about that now in God's kingdom and how He says, pay the cost up front, be honest, ask for forgiveness, change your life now. It's going to cost you, it's going to hurt. But look at the long term freedom of you have $1 million worth of freedom in your life now. This is a big deal to like wrap your head around and to think about and not just pass up. I'm trying to think of other areas of my life, where I have um, I stepped not just alcohol, but I stepped away from other things. And so one of the moments is like my phone, for example. I remember sitting upstairs the other day, it was about 9:30 at night. I'm still looking at my phone, and I went through a nice little phase of not being on my phone all the time. Then all of a sudden everything changed, and I just got on my phone again because I got a new phone. Turns out new phones are, I swear, they're made with like addicting power, the way they touch and feel. It's very evil. But I remember sitting there and like looking at my hand, and my hand was like starting to cramp. And I'm like, sucks. Like, and I dropped my phone right there on the carpet. And I'm like, this thing is like taking over my life. and my hand literally hurts from all of the scrolling and all the playing on it that I don't need to be doing, and this is kind of brutal. What am I doing to myself? I'm filling myself with short-term pleasure again, and I'm like, I gotta change something. Why am I glued to this device? I'm missing the life that's, like, beyond the screen. Another area of my life is calling. I think that's another piece that we don't talk about enough is, are we sacrificing our calling for comfort? And look at that in this, like, this play of your calling is gonna cost you to get into, but it's gonna create long-term freedom. So what is that for you? It's for me, it's this podcast is costing me short-term pleasure for sure. Like, I get up early. I find times to work it into, like, lunch breaks and different times of the day and, outside of my 9 to 5 job, but I'm like, "This is what I'm called to do, and it's gonna cost me to get it up and going," but I really believe this is what God has going forward, and I'm gonna, like, lean into that, and one day I wanna be living in that freedom and that pleasure that comes with it. But am I willing to sacrifice? Am I willing to pay the price now to have it long term? Or am I gonna say, "Hey, you know what? That 9 to 5 comfort's really good." You know? I'm not saying everybody has to quit their 9 to 5, but this is just my story here, is I need to sacrifice a lot of Netflix. I need to sacrifice a lot of other things, but I don't sacrifice my relationships with my wife and my kids and become a workaholic. Like, those are important, like, relationship with God, my wife, and my kids. Like, those are the big ones I really gotta focus on. But I don't need to be watching the baseball game at night, the football game, the hockey game. I don't need to be watching the next movie. I don't need to go to the movies. I do prioritize time with my wife and my kids and date nights and the valuable quality time with everybody. And then in the wee hours of the night, like, hey, I got to wake up. I got to go sit down. I got to journal. I got to write out the next episode. It's just, I got to just pray, spend time with the Lord about what is changing in life. But there is this profound wisdom to be found in, can you pay the price right now to have the long-term freedom? Instead of the other way now of don't pay the price now and pay it later. See, when we do the pay later, everybody, the world is doing this. Everything, it's like have now, pay later. It's literally like impacted our finances. This scheme of the devil to get what you want now, pay for it later. Isn't that is the scheme of the devil in every single area of life. Read the whole Proverbs like I was talking about, and you will notice this. You will notice everything says, walk upfront with integrity and honesty. Don't lie. Don't be a fool. Be generous. Be kind. Do all these things that are, guess what, extremely hard to do and cost you a lot up front. But it always says, like, it leads to a blessed life. It leads to a full life. It leads to a prosperous life. It leads to, like, a return. And isn't that what you want? 40 years from now, don't you want a return on all of your efforts? Because look at your life. If you're not getting the results you want, we talked about this in a past episode, your inputs determine your outputs. If you're inputting just self pleasure, you're only going to be getting consequences out of it. So kind of landing the plane a little bit is when I was sitting in that church service, the lights were dim, felt numb to the people around me. I had a choice to make. And that choice was, am I willing to sacrifice short term pleasure for long term freedom? Or am I going to keep paying the price of short term comfort and then long term pain? And it wasn't until I finally got to a moment where I'm like, something has to change, that I was willing to step out and look at trying to figure it out. There's many areas of my life, like I just said, I'm like, I'm trying to figure out my phone. I'm trying to figure out my calling. I kind of figured out alcohol, but hey, you know what? Sugar's good too. And that's a struggle now too. I love, like, when my refrigerator has ice cream in it. It's so good. I love it. But there's so many areas of my life where I'm like, dang, I really need to look at what short-term comfort am I overindulging in that's going to cost me later? Because living in the wisdom of what God has given us in his word is going to lead to freedom and it's going to lead to life. I want to go, as the saying says, with the grain of God's creation instead of against it and thinking that that's going to work. Yeah, you can lie and manipulate all you want. It might work for a bit, but it will not work a long time or long term. And part of getting guests on here is we're going to start hearing more stories of, yeah, I invested in this and then it bit me. So think about your life. Think about what you're investing in. Is it already biting? Are you starting to feel the bite? Are you looking at the venom as not so much as what's actually happening to your physical body, but you're looking at the venom of like, wow, there's these tangibles that are not a part of my life that it's really affecting. My relationships with my kids, my wife, my spouse, my finances, my health, my body. Look at all the non-measurables that we can't physically touch. Is the venom from your choices of short-term comfort starting to bite? If so, time for some change. Time to look at it differently. I'm like journaling, and I would highly encourage journaling. And so I'm going to start sharing the journal from Steve basically in this podcast, and I'm going to start walking you on a journey. So one of the things we're doing now that's different is I'm going to start releasing episodes every Monday morning at 6 a.m. And it's going to be based off, I'm going to be journaling all week, and I'll be able to write down stories, and I'll get better at sharing the stories as well of this happened this week. This is what God has taught me, and this is how I'm applying it. And you know what? There's no bow at the end of this story. There's going to be a lot of those. Maybe there's some bows. Most time, probably no bow. I'll probably see the bows at the end of the story when I die, when I get to heaven. But guess what? I'll be able to see the hope that's going to start incurring in my life. I don't know if incurring is the right word. I'm going to start being able to see it better. The hope that comes with the decisions I'm making, because I know they're rooted and founded in. Well, thanks for joining us today on the Revive Podcast. Hopefully you like the new studio space, and hopefully you like the new time that the episodes come out. Like, share, subscribe, send to a friend. Weekly episodes now, Mondays at 6 a.m. And take care. Hope you have a great week. Cheers.